Welcome to Matters Financial, Geopolitical from a Frontier. Trust you had a great weekend. We dropped off my middle daughter Layla at the airport last night. It's always a bittersweet thing, isn't it? You know, they're going forward into the world, but at the same time, as I told her, it was so lovely to just know she was in the house. Even if sometimes the door was shut and all we could hear was a bit of music, it still made me a lot happier. I did an interview with a gentleman called Peter Wuffli, who's the chairman of the Partners Group. He was previously the CEO of UBS. He's the founder of the Elia Foundation for Ethics in Globalization. He's chairman of the board of IMD Business School, an investor in ICAO and Gaza Design and a bunch of other startups here in Kenya. And he knew more about what was going on at the coalface than many of us, because we met him at dinner at the Swiss ambassadors, and then I followed up with this interview. It's about 20 minutes. Do take a listen. Home thoughts, beautiful views, much desired serenity, and action at every turn you make. This is why the Masai Mara is a must destination for you. It is probably the best destination in Kenya. Nihab 16, who I follow, tweeted, "A line is a dot, gone for a walk." Evolution, understanding existence are a line where every dot connects. Every dot in a line has a responsibility to its past and future. Creator is created and creates. And that was a reference to a comment by Paul Clay. He's seen in this video via Matthew Gale. He takes you around some of the paintings and works of Paul Clay at the Tate. I responded by saying, I still like Mark Rothko the most. He said, I'm interested only in expressing basic human emotions, tragedy, ecstasy, doom, and so on, he declared. And then Nahab responded, a painting is not a picture of an experience, but is the experience. That's Rothko, and Rothko again, silence is so accurate. Came across a Brazilian musician, Antonio Carlos Jobim, from 1970, Stoneflower. And I did those interviews with Maurice and Roche Hennessy, and they very kindly left me with a bit of drink, and I shared a Moët Hennessy Nectar Imperial with Layla before she left. It was very delicious. It's a rosé, and it is indeed a nectar. Thank you. Look inside California's hidden mid-century modern mansions. I must say, I personally like this type of architecture. Political reflection, Saudi Arabia's king reportedly hid in a military bunker as palace guards fought a toy drone. That's from Sputnik. Take you back to November 2017 when I wrote The Paranoia. Palaces in Saudi Arabia is both real and existential. If it was a toy drone, I don't think you would have had this response that T Commodity tweeted. This is from Breaking N Live. Reports of heavy gunfire ongoing near Saudi King's Palace in Riyadh. The king has reportedly been evacuated to a bunker at a military base in the city. Casualties unclear. So, I said in my article in November, I think it's the most dangerous moment for the House of Saud. He's moving in so many stakeholders, and the biggest one, of course, is his own family. Recep Tayyip Erdoğan is seen in this tweet. Obviously, it's going to be a landslide. This photo of George H.W. Bush sitting in front of his beloved wife's casket pierced my soul. Jason Howerton. Were married for 73 years, suffered through losing a child together. They made it to the White House together. They watched their son become president. What a life, indeed. My piece over the weekend is called The pivot towards the Commonwealth. Last week, the Commonwealth held its 24th CHOGM, Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in London. The theme of CHOGM 2018 was towards a common future, and the focus was on working together to deliver a more prosperous, secure, sustainable and fair future for all citizens. The Commonwealth is a voluntary association of 53 independent and equal sovereign states, and according to the Commonwealth Secretary-General Patricia Scotland, the Commonwealth is 1/3 of humanity. I blinked when I saw the raw data, that there are 2.4 billion of us, and that in fact the Commonwealth is bigger than Facebook. I noted that President Kenyatta made his way to the London Stock Exchange and that maybe we should IPO ourselves. Today, the vast majority of us in the Commonwealth are born free. And whilst I appreciate Emmanuel Macron's comment, I don't want to belong to a generation of sleepwalkers, which has forgotten its own past and which refuses to face up to the problems of its own present. Our reality is a new and fresh one. The richness of the Commonwealth tapestry is in fact found in our common literature. The Commonwealth's central contradiction was that we were all both similar and different. Think of writers like Jean Rhys, Fierce Naipaul, Chinua Achebe, Salman Rushdie, all of whom, notwithstanding their ethnic and geographical particularity, were dealing with issues that touched on all of us. An experience of cultural confusion, linguistic and physical dislocation, a reassertion of self-consciousness, and a search for identity. The freshly minted Commonwealth Youth Ambassador, Prince Harry, said 60% of the Commonwealth is under the age of 30, and at 1.4 billion strong, it is you who are going to change the world. Prince Harry added, "You are the most optimistic, connected generation the world has ever known." Once we used to send aerograms. Does anyone recall them? Actually, I was talking about aerograms to somebody and they had no idea what I was talking about. Across the Commonwealth, and today the mobile phone has dissolved the distances and connected us all practically in real time. And I think the important point is this: you can have all the resources in the world, you can dig it all out of the ground, but far more valuable is the resource that walks on that ground. And in my humble opinion, unlocking the human capital is the magic elixir in this new 21st century of ours. Martin Sutherland, the De La Rue CEO, said there are 2.4 billion people in the Commonwealth and we need to tap into it. That's a massive talent pool. De La Rue are doing this, but all businesses can do more. Interestingly, De La Rue has been operating at the coalface of this Commonwealth economy for quite a while. De La Rue trades with 86% of Commonwealth countries and the majority of its staff are based in the Commonwealth. The majority of its production facilities and 100% of its manufacturing centres of excellence are located in the Commonwealth. Here in Kenya in 1991, De La Rue invested in a state-of-the-art facility which prints banknotes, which are circulated in more than 30 countries worldwide. De La Rue is in fact the best example of a business I can find that has already pivoted towards the Commonwealth economy. According to the raw data, the Commonwealth boasts a combined gross national income of $10.7 trillion, and this is expected to rise to 14 trillion by 2020. Prime Minister Theresa May and Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson, who are navigating the United Kingdom's exit out of the European Union, have evidently decided to pivot to the Commonwealth. I believe this pivot to the Commonwealth is a seriously decent trade. Everywhere I look this week, I see a Commonwealth that is optimistic about its future, said the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Theresa May. This board-free Commonwealth is a massive blue sky opportunity, And it has the big mo, but the key to unlocking its potential is all about unleashing the human capital, which is a massive talent pool. And then some photographs today in Windsor. Representatives and heads of government from around the Commonwealth are meeting to discuss issues of common interest at the end of the CHOGM 2018 week. Then there's a short video, 1 week in 1 minute. CHOGM, 5 days, 4 key priorities, 3 days of forums, 2.4 billion people, 1 common future, and 1 amazing week. The royal family, thanks to all the organisations talking about their work and the work they do in the Commonwealth today and throughout CHOGM 2018. And then this is an old photograph of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip with Emperor Haile Selassie in Ethiopia in 1965. Kim Jong-un stops all North Korea missile tests in boost to peace hopes, suspended nuclear long-range ballistic missile tests, and is to close its nuclear test site, it announced last night, adding to momentum to peace before summits with South Korea and the United States. New York Times says, what does Kim Jong-un want? To US fears, answer is give a little and gain a lot. As North Korea's reclusive ruler, Kim Jong-un prepares for a landmark meeting with President Trump. He has seized the diplomatic high ground, making conciliatory gestures on nuclear testing and American troops that have buoyed hopes in South Korea, and won praise from Mr. Trump himself, who called it big progress. Some suspect he is posturing in advance of the summit meeting, as well as a separate meeting this coming week with South Korea's president, and has no real intention of acceding to demands that he relinquish his nuclear weapons. One senior American official is labeling it a freeze trap. In Washington, most officials and experts believe that the North Korean leader is determined to cement his country's status as a nuclear state while escaping the chokehold of economic sanctions. Mr. Trump has vowed not to do that. His aides say he's beguiled by the prospect of making history on the Korean Peninsula. He has yet to impose any preconditions on his meeting with Mr. Kim. Chinese officials, I found this interesting, fear that there will be sidelined in negotiations and that Mr. Kim will pursue a deal with the United States that places the North closer to Washington than Beijing. They're doing a great job of appearing reasonable, but picking apart the maximum pressure campaign and positioning themselves to be accepted as a nuclear weapons state in the future. That's the point. And all behind all of that, I go back to September 2017 when I said front and center in Kim's mind must be the image of Saddam Hussein being hung by his neck and Muammar Gaddafi meeting his death. Melania has never looked this happy. Have a look at this photograph. It's rather good. Trump is more worried about the Cohen investigation than the Mueller one, says Bloomberg View. India's Modi will visit China's Xi this week in a new sign of thawing diplomatic relations. I remain of the view that Xi Jinping has gotten Narendra Modi where he wants him, surrounded on all sides. And that therefore this visit is a capitulation, in fact. Let's move on to the currency markets. Euro, dollar, 122.74. Dollar index had a good old bounce, hurdle 90, 90.405. Japanese yen, 107.80. Swiss franc, 0.9754. The pound, 140.18. The Australian dollar, 0.7681. Indian rupee, 66.185. South Korean won, 1068.745. The Rial, 341.47, Egyptian pound, 17.7325, and the Rand back above 12 at 12.0870. It's a bit of a buy here, I think. Dollar index, I stuck with my 88 stop, and we've moved up now above 90. We're at 90.405. US interest rates continue to climb, and I think support the dollar. Euro dollar, this is a chart via Holger, 122.73, 125.60 in my mind remains an absolute cap. Bloomberg Industrial Metals Subindex total return is at a 5-year high as of last week. Signs of synchronized global economic growth are boosting the demand outlook for industrial metals amid disruptions to supply, helping push the Bloomberg Industrial Metals sub-index total return to 5-year high last week. We've seen a significant move higher in those, with the tariff war unsettling the supply side, and basically the commodity market has really outperformed. Interestingly, looking at people I follow, Chigal and a couple of others, they're all kind of signaling a big breakout to the upsides. Chigal is talking about silver and copper. Here is a 20-year chart on Brent crude. As I said previously, I think Trump, notwithstanding his tweet about OPEC, is trying to shove the price up in order to ease the Crown Prince into the position, but this is not sustainable in the medium term. Gold last trading at 1334. Sub-Saharan Africa, US warns of growing African terror threat. Hicks said that Al-Qaeda represented the bigger concern due to its ability to plan for the long term. The biggest Al-Qaeda affiliate is Al-Shabaab in Somalia, where the terror group commands some 4,000 to 6,000 active fighters, according to the US military. This is Africa's youngest head of government, Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed Ali, officially opening the 7th Tana Forum. He's saying all the right things. He's just like Obama was in 2008, but the issue is, can he follow through? In 2017, the African average for youth unemployment reached 13.6%, more than twice that of adults. That seems to be a low number. That's the Mo Ibrahim Foundation, who also issued a very interesting report, Public Service in Africa. Only 3 countries, Libya, Mauritius and Tunisia, have at least one doctor per 1,000 people. Cairo's population is larger than each of the 36 least populous countries on the continent. Sub-Saharan Africa has the second smallest public health expenditure of all regions, far below the world average. Approximately 60% of jobs in Africa are considered vulnerable. Public employees in Africa represent less than 12% of total employment. The rapid spread of Ebola in West Africa was exacerbated by weak health systems. In a continent where more than 40% of the population is under 15 years old, progress in education has almost come to a stop. More than 60% of primary school students dropped out in Madagascar, Mozambique and Rwanda in 2012. That's a very high number for Rwanda. In 2018, the 20 biggest cities of the continent managed populations bigger than many countries. Interesting report, take a look. South African all shares down 3.23% this year, dollar versus rand. Here at 12.087, I think it's time to buy the rand. Egyptian pound 17.7325. Nigerian all share up 6.72% this year. The Ghana Stock Exchange up 33.31% this year. Came across a very interesting article from Jerry Wangari, African Millennials, the Myths and the Reality. Globally, millennials were born in the world into the digital age, a generation that grew up with the internet and digital communications. Saying Africa is by far the youngest continent in the world. And then talking about the generation that has come beyond, after the millennials, saying this is Generation Z, currently aged 22 years and below. And they are in the majority in terms of population in Africa. I wrote a piece in January this year, the millennials with their avocado eating and cryptocurrency trading ways are just as likely to be African as they are European or American. Zambia risks asset attachments as Libya debt payments missed. Lack green considering chasing after Zambia's offshore assets after the southern African country defaulted 4 times on an order to pay $257 million in compensation for nationalizing a firm it invested in. The missed payments following the 2016 order mean that Lack Green could pursue Zambia's assets. This was a consent judgment. It's fully enforceable. Since the issue date, yields on the 10 and 30-year Eurobonds, that's Kenyan Eurobonds, have declined by 60 basis points and 50 basis points respectively. That's from the site report. You know, they were sold with a concession, as you remember. A number of things blew up whilst they were marketing. One was the IMF issue, amongst others. Flame Tree Group reported full year 2017 earnings per share declined 72.222%. Revenue was down just 4.698%, so that's not too bad. Gross profit down 11.726%. Admin expenses were up 12.736%. Other operating expenses were up 31.85%. Profit before tax declined 76.468%. Earnings per share down 72.222%. Cash and cash equivalents, which is always a good indication, that's negative 323.25 million from 101 million negative previously. What they do is they're a diversified manufacturer and distributor of plastic tanks, cosmetics and snacks. Gross profit margins declined to 32.9% margin versus 35.5%, and they attributed that to a rise in polymer prices in the global markets, increase in fuel and input food prices following the negative impact of the prolonged drought. Overall expenses rose by 45 million, largely impacted by a 37.8 million increase in admin expenses. Made significant provisions against receivables from supermarkets in Kenya that have been extremely slow to pay. That's Nakumat, they're not going to get paid. I think it's a bit of a buy on dips, but dip I would expect a little bit lower than here. Kenya shilling 100.18. Nairobi all share up 6.73% this year, but it's corrected 7.407% since closing at a record on the 5th of April. NSE 20 is down for the year, minus 0.04%. Finally, you can check any listed share with the final link on the webpage for rich wrap-ups. Once again, thank you for stopping by. Wishing you a tremendous week.